But you can see that the first week we looked at the remote desktop solutions, and the last 2 weeks we've been building the Horizon lab environment. Okay, so if you look at the worksheets, it does take a long time, especially depending on your virtualization platform and your physical hardware. And hopefully we can move on now. Hopefully what we have now is the environment where we can start doing some of the things that's related to the virtual desktop rather than building up the infrastructure. So you'll see that today we're going to create the virtual desktop image for deployment. So you probably heard of me talking about the Golden Master when we talked about the servers and whatnot. It's the same idea. It's a virtual machine that's going to be the basis for all the virtual desktops that we're going to deploy as users connect. So if you remember from the first lesson, we talked about how we can create what's called instant clones or even permanent clones, but they need to come from somewhere. You don't want to deploy the virtual machines from scratch, as in define the virtual hardware, install the operating system, install the apps and all that kind of stuff from scratch every time, because that takes too long. So what we need to do is create an image to deploy these virtual desktops from. And then after that, we're going to build and configure the desktop pools, which is where now a client, so next week, that's where the clients can connect and then generate one of these virtual desktops for themselves and run them. And then after that, we're going to configure these virtual desktops with Active Directory group policy. So you remember, if you remember, we've spoke about group policy in the past, and this is a way of making configuration changes across the board over a group of computers. But obviously, we're going to focus on specifically the Active Directory group policy objects that's relevant to the virtual desktop rather than the general one. So we're then going to start building the virtual environment, which is week 7, but we might talk about it today, so you can have an understanding of what it is afterwards. Then we're going to continue to look at group policies for the user and computer, and then we'll have sort of a term break, and then we'll be managing our end user environment, deploying apps, publishing the Horizon desktops, connecting end users, and that's about it. Okay, so at the end of the day, what we want to do, like I said, is to have a system where we can have users connect. So we're not going to worry about the external users on the internet facing. We're going to worry about the people already on the LAN. They're going to connect and they're going to get a virtualized desktop that they can use to do their day-to-day work. Obviously, we spoke about the other components. We need that, a VMware, access gateway to actually allow for a connection from the internet. Talk about the worksheet first, because the worksheet, again, as you know, everything's a little bit long in this one. Okay, you can see the worksheet, it's 26 pages. Okay, and look at all the stuff we need. Okay, so you see all that stuff? Maybe you need to start copying that stuff right now. Then we've got the Horizon optimization tool. We've got the Horizon agent. And we've got the Brave browser standalone nightly. This is an example of an application you might put, because we don't want to put too much on there. It makes it too big. So we'll put this one as an example application that you're going to deploy as a part of the standard build, whereas then we have applications which are now follows the user or the computer. And so we also have this remote management console. If you remember, we used that to manage the virtual machines through a console. So we need all of that. So basically, we still got the same network configuration at the end of the build. We download all the virtual machines. We install the remote on our host machine. We install the VMware remote management console. So literally, that's just, I'm sure no one will struggle with this, but just in case, it doesn't give you details because it's literally a quick wizard. Horizon agent. So I've got this there, I've got this this. I think that's everything. All right, so you need all of those as well, Robin. All right, so download that in the background while we're talking. So the aim of today's thing, and also just so you know, with all the virtual machines we've got here, there's an order you should start them up now. Okay, if you turn them all off completely, you should think about what needs what in order to start them up in the right order. So does the DC need anything? Oh, sorry, did the main controller need anything? Really? Yeah, it doesn't really need anything, right? Yeah, it's providing the DNS service, so everything pretty much needs DNS. So start this one first. TrueNAS, does that need anything? Not really. It's got the storage, and all of these ESXi needs the storage, doesn't it? So start this one. So it says start TrueNAS and DC first, and then once those are running, ESXi2, because vCenter needs ESXi2 to be started before it can manage, right? So we start them two next, then we start vCenter, and then we start Horizon Server. So if you want to avoid any problems, because if you don't start up in the right order, sometimes I noticed that, for example, the data store will not be available in the vCenter ESXi host because it wasn't there when you started up, right? But if you start in the right order, you avoid these kind of silly problems. So what's going to happen? So what's going to happen is we're going to manage these virtual machines, and we're going to create a brand new virtual machine, which is not something new. We're going to store it on our data store. We're going to store the Windows 10 installation ISO in our data store, and that's because we need to use it. And then we're going to create a new virtual machine. We're going to create it as if this is the image, the golden master image. Then once we're actually configured it just like normal, except that it's in VMware vSphere, then we're going to actually modify the BIOS, because it is never going to be a physical machine. It's never going to be having some hardware requirements. So therefore, we're going to modify the BIOS so that things like I/O, things like serial ports, things like that, they're all disabled, because it's never going to be physical. So anything you have like that, it's going to make it slower. All right. So basically, we're going to disable all of these things because they're never going to be really there. There's never going to be one that's connected to it. So then we save the configuration, and then we just install VMware tools, just like when we create the Golden Master. We need to make sure it's perfect almost. So we install VMware tools as one of our first steps, and that's basically the same process as we normally do, except that it's in VMware V. So then we installed the Horizon agent. The agent is what is going to be used in the virtual desktop to sort of connect to it, and also how we manage it and monitor it. So it's this little bit of software we install inside, and we're also going to install. So that's the agent configuration. We won't talk about it. We're going to install an additional standard application. So this is the ones that's part of every build. Okay, so we said that we're going to install that Brave browser as just an example. And I'm not going to give you instructions on installing the Brave browser because, to be honest, click, 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 okay, finish, right? And then we're going to use this Windows optimization tool to actually optimize it. So which means we're going to disable, so this is the tool, we're going to analyze it first of all, and then we're going to find all of these things that are recommended to disable, to undo, or whatever. So stuff like power settings, stuff like a screensaver, stuff like all of so many stuff, okay, that we don't need. We're going to try to make this virtual machine as lean, as light as possible, because don't forget, it's a virtual machine. Who cares if the power settings is not turned off properly? To be honest, once the person logs out, it's deleted, isn't it? So it doesn't matter if it's going to turn off or not turn off. So then we obviously set the time zone. We do this generalize, which is actually similar to that sysprep. But this is not the ultimate sysprep process yet, okay? This is just making, again, stripping away anything that's unique, okay? So getting rid of anything that's unique before we actually do some stuff. And then we're going to, when we deploy, we're going to do a sysprep as we're deploying it as well. Because remember the SID, right? The security identifier. So this process is not generating a new SID just yet. It's actually going to just strip away anything that's general. It's unique about this thing, but this is not where we do the SID. So we'll just finish. Sorry, I noticed a little error there. And then we're going to go and use the finalize, which will definitely flush, basically get rid of any default user profiles, flush DNS, get rid of any IP addresses and all those kind of things, as well as clear KMS. That's the if you forgot what KMS is, that's a key management system. So obviously, if we want to have licensed copies of Windows, we need to activate it. And one way to activate it is using a key management server. And then after that, we shut down the virtual machine. We take a snapshot. And then that's the end of this worksheet. The next worksheet is where we create these resource pools and where we actually take this image and we can deploy virtual desktops for the users when they connect. Okay, so we're sort of, if you want to think about it, we're making a big soup. We're just chopping up the vegetables now, making sure the vegetables are ready. And we're going to, the last couple of weeks, we've been, mincing the meat or whatever. We're making sure all the ingredients are ready to go. But next week is when we actually try to deploy a virtual desktop. So short PowerPoints, only 15 slides, because again, the prac work is going to be the longest. So today we're going to look at creating the virtual desktop image for deployments. Like I said just then, this is what all our virtual desktops or instant clones that users get will be based on. So this is almost like that golden image template. Okay. So today's objective is define the build process. Okay. Create the Windows desktop golden image, create a virtual desktop machine, customize and optimize the virtual desktop operating system, and install the Horizon agent. So first of all, the build process. Like I said, it's like building a example desktop. So the process initially is creating the virtual hardware, installing the operating system, configuring the operating system, installing some standard apps and stuff like that. So it's exactly like creating a new virtual machine. But the key difference is in the deployment model, which will come later. So the virtual desktop image are used to create snapshots or templates for cloning. Okay, these cloning can create virtual desktops. Snapshots or templates is created from the image. So the snapshots used for instant clones or link clones, and templates are used for full clones. Standard desktops, so these are virtual desktops, standard desktops. The image is pushed out via the desktop management platform. And the best practice for building a virtual desktop OS image is to build a brand new desktop image from scratch. Okay, don't try to do some P2V. So it's, you can get a little bit lazy, because if I say, hey, I've got that computer that's already deployed exactly how I want it, why can't I just do P2V and create a virtual machine? Because if you don't realize, in a physical machine, you have so much junk. Okay, so for example, if I go to my device manager, you can see that I've got all these drivers on my physical computer for the specific hardware that I've got. And if I open, for example, this network card or display adapter, actually, it's this one. And if I actually look at the properties, you can see that the driver details. Hopefully it lets me see it, because I hopefully am got enough powers on this computer. But it actually shows me exactly where the files are on the C drive, system 32, whatever. It's got all of these files on the system. That's just one driver, right? Just one driver. But just imagine all of the devices. So therefore, this desktop machine, that physical desktop machine, is very bloated already from these kind of things. Another thing is, look at if this is a virtual machine, if this is a physical machine that's being used already. If I go to users, whoa, look at all these profiles that's already there. All right, so let's just even have a quick look at that. I can see that's 2.6 gigs, not too bad actually, but at times it can be a lot bigger. So beyond just what's left over on the physical machine, which is specific for the hardware, or what other users are left behind, who's to say what other software is on there? All right, so I can go through and look at every piece of software. I can look through every piece of software and check that it's correct. I can go look at every update. I can look at every feature, Windows feature, and see if it's correct. But to be honest, it's just easier just to deploy a brand new one, fresh, because I know there's no malware on that. If it's fresh, I know there's no additional bloated what's the software or data that's on there because it's not being used. So we want to keep it as clean as possible. Okay. So avoid using the P2V, which is possible, but don't do it. Not good recommendation. Design the image specifically for the virtual desktop machines. So what do you need it for? Okay, who are going to be using it? Is this going to be for everyone in the organization? If it is, then what are the standard software? What are specific software that only some users need and some users don't need? If I put any of that in there, that means it's going to be big again. So I need to keep it as simple, as slim, as slim down or cut down as possible. So the importance of a clean image is that the physical desktop images are often larger than necessary because of all that bloat that we talked about. It contains unnecessary files like the Windows.old, especially if it's been upgraded. So let's see if we've got it. So on the C drive, do we have a Windows.old? No, we do not, but we definitely have this, which has got all the source files for a lot of the setup things. But if you've done an upgrade, you've got a Windows.old folder. And that's just one example. There's many other examples that I just showed you. Also, the high performance storage is expensive. A clean, optimized image reduces the cost. So what does that mean? So, you know, our storage server, the TrueNAS in our case, but in a real deployment, it'll probably be better than a TrueNAS. It'll probably be some sort of SAN, especially for a desktop virtualization infrastructure. It'll be some sort of SAN. And obviously, the cost of the SAN is a lot more expensive than a physical hard drive. So any waste of space is actually very expensive per gig. So basically, a clean, optimized image will reduce your costs. So defining the build process, device driver considerations. So ensure the image includes the correct drivers for virtual desktops. Use the VMware drivers for the specific virtual desktop drivers. Avoid hardware-specific drivers from the physical desktops. Okay. Improper drivers can impact the performance. So these are the steps. First of all, so this is the overview of the steps. So you can see that this is where we're going to. So we're going to create a new desktop create a new virtual desktop in vSphere, install the guest OS into that virtual machine, install the VMware tools. We're going to do the customization and optimization. We're going to install any additional apps, standard apps. Then we're going to install the Horizon agent. Okay, so building the gold image. The first step involves creating the virtual desktop machine from a virtual hardware perspective. So defining what the virtual hardware is, how many hard drives, what kind of CPU, how much RAM, that kind of stuff. Before starting, we need to consider the specifications and configurations. So the configuration may vary depending on how you're going to use it. Okay, if this is for general, maybe a call center work, it's going to be very simple. Versus if this is going to be used by used by the data analyst who's going to do a lot of queries on database, doing some sort of business and analytics. Okay, it's going to be very different. So the call center person might have very slimmed down as far as amount of RAM and CPU, but whereas that data analytics person might get more CPU and RAM because they need it to do their job. Configurations can be adjusted after the image is built, of course, easy, because we know that virtual machines, we can just change the RAM if it's not right, change the amount of CPU if it's not right. So it's not the end of the world if we get it wrong. So we can also use that, creating a clone of the virtual machine, just adjusting that. Remember to avoid over provisioning. Okay, what does that mean? That means, sometimes it's hard to think outside of what you are familiar with. Because when you, Roman, or anyone, when you go buy a computer, do you think of what you do every day and buy the computer for that, what you do every day? Or do you think, oh, you know what? I on my school holidays, I like to play some games. Okay, those games need me to have a 4090 graphics card. Need to have 128 gigs of RAM and 2 SSDs set up in Mirror or RAID or some sort of RAID, parity RAID, and all that. And then you go and buy the most you can afford, right? That's probably the mentality a lot of people have. To get the best. Yeah, for performance, for maybe playing games, right? You don't do games, Simon? Yeah, that's right. So that's the thing. That's the traditional point of thinking, because in that situation, you're buying hardware, and like you said, you want it to last for however many long the hardware is going to last you without doing too much. But the thing is, we got to separate now from the hardware, because don't forget, these are virtual machines. There's no hardware. You can always upgrade the hardware ever you like, which is the underlying virtualization environment, but the virtual machine settings are not tied to the hardware. We can give it, let's say, 1 gig of RAM, but we can adjust it to 4 gig of RAM in the future. Okay, we can give it 1 CPU core, but we can adjust it to 8 CPU cores in the future down the track. So if you over provision, you're just wasting resources. Okay, ensure the virtual desktop machines are configured appropriately for their intended use, what they're going to be used for. So best practice, do not over provision resources. Tailor the configuration to match the specific use case. Use the standard configuration as a baseline and modify as needed if you need it for different different pools. For example, we've got a call center pool. We might have a data analytics pool. So, but they might have different use cases, and we can adjust them for those. When we're creating a virtual desktop virtual machine, we've got to define the hardware, and this is done in vCenter. Okay, so we should be familiar with that. So we define the virtual hardware and where it's going to be stored, choose the virtual network it's going to be connected to, and then what ISO file it's going to use for installation. So if we have a look at this picture, we can see that it's got 2 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, which is probably too much for us. This is just a picture after all. It's on the VM network, but we can, if we have many other networks, we can choose whichever network we want. And here we are looking at the specific adapter type. So making sure we got in this case, we're not going to worry too much about that in our walkthrough, but this is saying it's using that specific adapter, and that's going to be what's exposed to the virtual machine's operating system. So they'll install the drivers for that particular one. So we can configure the virtual desktop. We can configure that through the VMware remote console, okay, or web console. The best practice is to disable any legacy devices. So that BIOS is a copy of I think the old Award BIOS, if you remember. Yeah, Award BIOS. It's basically exactly like that. So we need to disable any legacy devices. Like I said previously, there's never going to be a situation where those ports are connected to this virtual machine. So legacy, I'm talking about old devices such as serial and parallel ports. Who uses that? Not really. It's not Cisco here. We don't need a serial port to connect to the routers. Even so, we could use the CPU ports anyway. But these are never going to be used, so why are we even supporting it? Anything you turn on means it's going to wait. Okay, so waste of CPU cycles because they're going to check during boot up. Is that there? If it's not there, then it's going to move on. That's fine. But because it has to check, it's a waste of CPU resources. So again, if we're using a virtualization environment, if one virtual machine is checking and wasting a CPU cycle, that means another virtual machine will be missing out on that CPU cycle because it's being used up. So anytime we can make it efficient, we will. After we install the operating system, so we install the operating system as normal, but in the virtual machine, we can boot from the connected Windows client ISO. And obviously in our worksheet, we're using Windows 10. I know that's a little bit outdated, but it's just that we need something simple. Windows 11, as you know, almost prevents you from actually completing the setup without some sort of online account. Okay, and don't forget, Windows 11 needs TPM 2.0, and it will encrypt the C drive straight away. And because of all that adds overheads, and obviously because of our resource limitations in the way we're doing the labs, I've kept it as Windows 10 to make it simplified. Okay, not because you can't do it with Windows 11, you definitely can. There's guides online for doing it with Windows 11, but the process is pretty much the same. It's just Windows 11. But hopefully you understand why I'm not using Windows 11 when we should, because Windows 10 is discontinued, and Microsoft will stop releasing patches and updates in the future, short term. So while I'm got here, every time I do this, but it's because I'm talking about something. Windows 10 end of life. So if you look at this, October 14th to 2025, your Windows 10 will no longer receive security updates. So for anyone who's using Windows 10 still at home or for anything, if it's in the production world, as in it's something that's going to be turned on, connected to real internet, then you're going to be exposed. Okay? So no one should be using Windows 10 after that point in time. I think Holotape SA is going to switch to Windows 11 as of next year, start of next year. So after we install the Windows operating system as normal, but in the virtual machine, we install VMware tools. So hopefully you guys are all familiar with Windows VMware tools. It provides numerous advantages, benefits, like for example, having the correct drivers, improve the performance of graphics and communication, memory management, such as memory ballooning. So if you don't remember that from the virtualization subject, it's when the physical memory of the host computer, the ESXi, is not enough. So it needs to get some memory back from the virtual machine, physical memory that is. And instead of the virtual machines having physical memory, which is RAM, it's going to be substituted with virtual memory, which is swap. If you don't know what virtual memory is, it's part of the hard drive, which is slow. Okay, so it's going to swap. I change the physical RAM to swap, and this process is called ballooning, which means that it reduces the physical memory, and once it takes out physical memory, it puts into this swap, which is a balloon file, and that inflates. And as memory becomes available, then the virtual machine will get more RAM, and this balloon will contract and put some of the things back in the physical memory. So it goes up, comes down. It's just like when you blow up a balloon, you release the air, goes up and down. That's what it is. You have things like shared folders, shared clipboard, shadow copy service support, and obviously it enables the VMware firmware to be updated. That's the virtual machines, virtual hardware, virtual firmware, the BIOS, effectively. Customize and optimize. So critical to the performance of the virtual desktop machine. So again, there's so many things which are for a physical machine. Like I said, what about the screensaver? Who the hell cares about the screensaver? It's as a virtual machine. The screensaver is not going to burn the screen, right? Who cares about power management? Who cares about disabling the hardware acceleration or notifications and all those kind of things? Notifications, Windows update process. All of those things are there because of the physical machines. But if we leave them on, they're just going to consume resources. So what we need to do is we need to turn off as many physical based features or features of a Windows OS that has a negative impact to the end user performance. Some examples would be turning the screensaver off, changing the power management, disabling any hardware acceleration, disabling notifications, disabling Windows update process. You probably, I can see your face, Roman. You're very funny about that, aren't you? So haven't we been telling you that we should always stay up to date? Yes, 100%. But don't forget the golden master image. So basically, if we have an update, we will get maybe something that's unexpected. And don't forget, anytime you deploy a new golden master image to a virtual desktop, it's going to be needing updates straight away because it's not going to be, the latest from like an hour ago, right? It's going to be needing updates straight away. Okay. So therefore, if you deploy 100 virtual desktops, are they all going to go download the updates, even if it's from your WSUS server? That's a waste of CPU processors and everything, isn't it? So therefore, that's definitely a no-no, as in that's a waste of resources. And to be honest, why update the individual clones or instant clones or virtual desktop? Why don't we just update the golden master? Okay. So basically, first of all, we can actually test those updates to make sure it's not affecting anything. And secondly, we can actually update the image so when we deploy it, it's going to have the updates already rather than getting the updates for every virtual desktop. And don't forget, even if we have a machine that's not the latest update, they're non-persistent. We spoke about the non-persistent virtual machines, aren't we? Haven't we? So what does that mean? That means whenever you request a new virtual machine, virtual desktop, it will get a new one for you. And as soon as you sign out, it's deleted. So basically, you're just doing those updates for no benefit because as soon as you log out, it's deleted. And if we actually have ICT team, which is managing and updating the golden image, periodically anyway, you're going to be fine most of the time. Okay. We will generalize the Windows OS with sysprep by regenerating the SID and the computer name. You can also do this manually, or we can use the scripts to automate the solution with the OS optimization tool, which is what we're talking about. With the OS optimization tool, we can even roll back to previous image histories. Installing the gold image application, only include the applications that will be common for all deployments. There's no point putting apps that not everyone's going to use because that's a waste of space again, because you'll be deploying into virtual desktops which are not needing it. Whereas if we actually keep those those specialized apps, we still need them obviously. We're going to deploy those apps through what's called an app volume, and we will talk about that in the future. So these would be delivered based on the requirement of the user or the group of users. Not all desktop will get these, but only the people who needs it will get those apps. Installing the Horizon agent. Like I said, the Horizon agent is a little bit of software that actually is used to actually connect to the client virtual machine and also reports on it and basically how we manage it. So it's installed after optimization so that it's not turned off by the optimization process. Ensure the version of the agent matches the desktop OS version. So for us, it's all of these various copies, but it's okay. We've got the one I'm giving you is fine, okay? So some of the agent features, some of the core features of the agent is like it's the same for everyone, but there's also USB redirection. That's basically redirecting your physical USB to the virtual machine. There's VMware virtualization pack for Skype and MS Teams. So basically, again, what if we need to use the video audio? So that's the real-time audio and video redirection. VMware Instant Clone Agent enables the virtual desktop machine to be delivered using instant clones. There's a VMware Horizon View Composer agent, which enables the virtual desktop machine to be delivered as link clones. There's a client drive redirection. So again, if you've got something that's on your client device, we can redirect that. There's a vRealize operation desktop agent, which is, these are additional agents. There's a scanner and smart card redirection, which is obvious, redirects your scanner if it's physically plugged in, or your smart card, which is physically plugged in. Serial port redirection, for the serial ports, redirecting for your physical device. Connected to the end user's endpoint device and redirected to the virtual desktop machine. VMware software, the SDO sensor redirection. So for example, if you have the iPad, you know the iPad, you can twist, you can turn, and then it automatically adjusts the screen to face the right direction, right? So basically it enables simple device orientation sensor redirection and also the geolocation redirection. Remember we said that with this, we can, you know, in the perfect world, in the perfect deployment, we can be anywhere in the world. So, well, wouldn't it be good if your virtual machine is telling you the weather in Adelaide if you're in Macau, for example? So the geolocation redirection makes your desktop, virtual desktop, think you're in Macau. So therefore, anything news, weather, and probably more important stuff than that is localized to where you are. It also allows you to do Horizon performance tracking, which monitors the performance of the display protocols and system resources. And also has integrated printing, which basically allows you to print to a physical device. And there's also a help desk plugin for Horizon Agent, which allows the help desk to monitor using the Horizon Agent help desk tool. There's other agents that you can add as well. Additional agents, consider installing other agents if you're using these components of the Horizon suite. The VMware App Volume and VMware DEM agents for VMware App Volume and the Dynamic Environment Management. Final steps, ensure all agents are installed as part of the final build of the golden image. Clean up, double check there's no temporary files or installers that's left on the golden image. And then once you've completed and you've built the image, it's ready for deployment, which is what we're going to do next. All right, so right now, Roman, what I want you to, we'll finish our presentation, so I'll stop recording. So I'll get you to work through the labs.